Welcome everybody to another episode of the Dragonfire podcast. My name is James Lloyd Doolin. I am the author of No Heart for a Thief, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Nathan Klembara, a reviewer for the Before We Go blog. And we have two amazing guests this evening. We have Krystle Matar and Michael R. Fletcher, both amazing authors in their own right, and the co-hosts of the up and coming Dripping Bucket podcast. We are excited to speak with y'all. How are y'all doing?
Actually, it's called the Leaking Bucket.
See,
no.
You're gonna
that
regret
was a
Just
very
fucking-
good take, and you just decided to
Yeah, we're
shit
good.
all over it. Thank
Just-
you, Michael.
Keep it roll with it. We're
Yeah,
good.
we'll just keep rolling with it. Yeah.
We're keeping this. This is staying in.
Yeah.
Yep.
Way to go,
Yeah.
Michael.
We're good.
Yeah. To all of our listeners, before we even started, or I guess after we started recording, James and I got their podcast name wrong, and we put it down as the Leaky Bucket. So,
James?
I'm gonna say this was a collective error
Yeah.
because
Okay.
I made the original error, but you didn't fix it, and
You didn't catch
that
it,
was an
James.
You
error.
should have caught the
James,
inside
like,
joke.
get on this shit, man.
Nathan, I trusted you. I believed in you, and
Yeah.
then you let me down.
I feel like we've known each other long enough that you should know not to do that. So that's on you.
Okay. Well, this is the last episode of the Dragonfire podcast. I am glad to have Michael R. Fletcher and Krystle Matar with us from the Dripping Bucket podcast.
I'm to lob a grenade in your otherwise very peaceful friendship.
Yes.
You're gonna regret having us on.
It's all fun and games. We're really excited to speak with y'all. So we'll go back. How is everybody doing?
We're doing very good now. We've broken all the tension. We're doing great. Not that there was that
there was
much
tension?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I mean, Nathan was making
like
it weird
this,
there
guys.
for a bit before we started rolling, but I think I've recovered.
Krystle, you should be at home here. This is your second time on the podcast. The first time we've ever had a return guest.
That means I win, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I officially win the podcast. It's mine
Nathan
now.
has ordered the award,
Yes.
and it's on its way.
Perfect.
Yeah. Well, before we get into it and talk a lot about the Dripping Bucket and where that came from and what you're doing with the podcast, can you both introduce yourself a little bit and tell us a little bit about the books that you write? And Michael, you have the artwork very lovely presented right behind you. So you tell us a little bit about those books?
Sure. Yeah. So Michael R. Fletcher, author of a pile of books, Obsidian Path series. You can kind of see those behind me. Manifest Illusions, City of Sacrifice. Yeah, it's kind of dark fantasy. I keep trying to write middle grade heroic fantasy and failing badly, so badly.
Oh man.
Too many
Yeah,
decapitations for the young ones.
Oh yeah, apparently, undead super hot girlfriends is not middle grade. Who knew?
Genre's all convention. It's just, you break the rules.
Yeah, if I can gatekeepers keeping me out.
Keeping you out of traumatizing the children of our
I
day.
know, that's all I want. Just
Good thing for this is the first and only time I've been thankful for gatekeepers.
I've heard that your series would make a lovely Disney show, a la like Percy Jackson kind of thing.
Yeah.
The studios keep approaching me, but they're not throwing quite enough, dump
Money.
trucks of cash at the front door. So I'm like,
Yeah. Is it the casting that's kind of holding you back, like the right of refusal and your ability to say yes or no, or is it just
like
the money?
If we don't get Arnold Schwarzenegger, I am out.
It's just so hard to find a convincing necromancer these days.
Yeah.
They're all like, no, I want to keep breathing.
And of course, the better and the best author on this podcast, we got to pass it off to Krystle.
Wow, thank you. That's a really low bar to clear with Fletcher on the podcast with me.
Are you taking shots at me too?
No, I said Fletcher specifically.
Wow.
You didn't even make it to bar level.
I told you were going to regret having us on at the same time.
This will
Okay,
be my
so I
first
did.
and last.
Yeah.
No
We're
second
just breaking
derivative.
relationships here left and right. That's the goal of this podcast.
I did Legacy of the Brightwash and then Legacy of Brick and Bone. Brightwash is a Spiffbo finalist, as well as a BBNYA finalist this year. It's kind of genre blended, a little bit of a mystery, or a murder mystery, a little bit of gaslamp fantasy, a little bit of political machinations. James has previously said that it shouldn't work, but it does, and I take that as the highest possible compliment. And that kind of sums up my writing career. I think it shouldn't work, but here I am anyway.
You know, that's I think it works as well as it does because it's a little bit of a mismatch of everything and it just kind of
Yeah.
fits well together, and where it, you know, in a lesser author's hands, it wouldn't work.
Oh, stop it.
Like in Michael's
don't-
hands, it just
Yeah.
wouldn't have worked.
Would have been a flop.
Yeah.
And I'm taking shots at Michael. I don't really even know Michael, but you know, I feel like I feel like
It's
you're the kind of
okay. I
person
will
that can take it.
cry myself
Yeah.
to sleep later in a couple of
Yeah.
weeks to get over it.
Wipe your tears with
I'm
all
just
of
gonna
your
review
money.
bomb your middle grade books. I gave this to my 5-year-old, and for some reason, he's been having nightmares.
Oh, yeah, that tracks.
So how did you two come together, and why did you decide to do this crazy thing called podcasting?
I guess I think the hinge is really our mutual friend Clayton Snyder. Where at some point a couple of years ago, Michael and Clayton decided to collaborate together on a book called Neuroska Groans, which was a Spiffbo finalist the same year as Brightwash. I think, yeah, that was Neuroska Groans. And
Brightwash did
Clayton,
slightly better. We're not bitter.
yeah. Clayton invited me on before we were finalists to beta read for that project, and then that kind of got me into Michael's sphere of victimization, where he now is also feeding on my brains the same way he fed on poor Clayton's brains. And we wanted to collaborate on a novel together, but just various things got in the way, and we've resuscitated this idea, but it's very slow going because Michael just finished drafting an entire novel, which took a little bit of time, I guess, as it does. But we got this podcast thing off the ground just because it gives us an opportunity to talk to other writers and other reviewers. And it's ever so slightly easier to organize than actual writing. Very much in the theme of writers will do literally anything to procrastinate from writing, including starting an entire podcast.
So
It's a
this
delaying
is just
tactic.
a procrastination
Yeah.
excuse.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay.
And it just, we had to expand the Dripping Bucket universe because it's in enough books now. It had to bust it into the real world.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? Like what is the Dripping Bucket? Where'd it come from? If I'm right, I saw it in a tweet from you, Michael. I don't know if that's the origin. Can you tell us a little bit?
Yeah, so like 5 or 6 years ago, while avoiding writing a book, I was goofing off on a Facebook. And I just had this idea of a shared tavern that could be in all worlds. Any writer could use it. You don't need permission. You make it your own, describe it however you want. And the thought was this sort of like a neat Easter egg that readers who don't actually interact with us, which is most of them, can find and sort of like think, wait a second, didn't I just read about a dripping bucket in a Peter McLean novel? Wait, wasn't a dripping bucket in a Krystle Matar novel? In a Clayton, in a Ben Galley novel, in a Rob Hayes novel, and now it's in dozens and dozens of
Yeah.
realities and worlds. And it started as a joke. I threw it out there as a joke and it just took off.
A couple of people took it seriously, and then it spread from there.
Yeah.
I think. And now, like, the pair of us are often tagged in posts asking, "Hey, is it okay if I use the dripping bucket? Am I allowed in the club?" So it would be cool to find out like exactly how many dripping buckets there are and keep track of the tally month to month, see how quickly it expands.
Yeah. And then when it came time to sort of name our podcast, it was sort of like, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't
So
remember which one of us came up with it, actually. It was just like, well, this is what we have to do. It started as Tales from the Dripping Bucket, but then people thought we
Yeah.
were doing an anthology, so we
Yeah,
dropped Tales and
confusing,
just
yeah.
went straight to the Dripping Bucket.
It's like,
Yeah.
no, we're doing this so we don't have to write.
Yes, exactly.
are you actually drinking during the podcast?
Not yet, because we film at 1:00 in the
Yeah, we're
afternoon.
usually fairly good before we even start. So you really don't
Yeah,
need to be seen actually drinking during the show if you're half lit before
yeah.
it starts.
I'm a little bit disappointed. I feel like there should be at least some whiskey imbibed during the making of
Yeah.
the dripping bucket.
So someday we'll record one after I've picked my kid up from school. So
Yeah.
right now I have to drive and I
That's
got to be
not
certain.
necessary.
What, picking her up or sobriety?
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B.
Pretty sure you're going to get
He's
me in
only
trouble.
he's only got the one, so he has to actually try to conserve this one.
Yeah, it's not like
Okay.
I've got
He doesn't
3
have
or
extras
4.
like I do.
Yeah.
This is going to be used as Exhibit A in some kind of court
In
case.
somebody's trial, yeah.
So if the podcast doesn't have alcohol involved and it's not an
Not yet.
anthology, what can people expect from the Dripping Bucket podcast?
Thank you for getting us back on task.
Yeah. The reason I agreed with it was because Fletcher agreed with me that I didn't want it to be solely focused on writing, because I feel like, one, there are quite a lot of writing podcasts, and I certainly don't feel qualified to offer advice. I've only been in this gig for a couple of years. I only have the 2 books, and also Imposter Syndrome.
It's the equivalent
And
of
I-
like 6 books, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're huge books.
It's true. It took a little while, but maybe that's a symptom of the fact of a problem and not actually a skill. So who's to say? But yeah, I wanted to be able to talk to writers, but also readers and kind of everybody in the biosphere of publishing. Like, I hope to have on like some audiobook narrators to talk about their side of the the art, as it were. I'd love to have on like a couple of booksellers. Like, I met some really great folks in Toronto at Bacca Phoenix Books who had so many stories about their relationships with customers and how they sell. And I just feel like, as hard as writing is, it's the first and in some ways the easiest step of the publishing journey. Like, we write our little book and we're happy enough with it to try to publish it, and then that kicks off this entire series of events that nobody ever seems entirely prepared for. And all along the way, there's so many passionate and artistic people, and I'd like to blow open the doors to just talking to all of them at some point. And so that was what, when he agreed to let me do that, I was like, okay, I'm in.
I just do as I'm told.
But it was his idea, so like, I
was like,
know.
let's do a podcast. And she was like, yeah, this is what we're doing. Oh, okay.
Sure.
So you just do the very light lifting, Michael, of like, let's do a
Yeah.
thing, and then Krystle actually does it.
I am awesome at let's do a thing.
Okay.
Yeah,
Less awesome
really awesome.
at doing a thing, because that's effort. And
Yeah. And I
I
get
don't
to
know
like
if that's a
podcast so I
fair-
can work.
stand on the shoulders of his fame a little bit and launch myself into higher spheres. He laughs
like,
as if he's not
standing on the
guy.
lowest bar.
You're at least on the ladder.
Yeah, I'm on the ladder. I'm getting there.
Oh. And I don't know if it's fair to say, Michael, that you are only good at saying let's do a thing with how many books do you have out now?
I
Minimum
actually
12.
don't know how many are
Yeah.
out. I finished I finished the first draft of my 15th like last week.
Yeah.
I think I have 12
Well, there's minimum
published.
12
Yes,
because
yeah,
you
12
have
published, one coming out in April, one with my agent, and then the first draft I just finished. So yeah, 12 released. That's
I can say
only.
that you've done a couple of things.
Yeah. He
oh yeah,
also
but I was always
produces music.
avoiding something else, you know. If there's something scarier, I can write a book.
Yeah.
That is fair. That is fair. Um, so I guess I'm interested in like with this podcast, you want to talk to a little bit of everybody from the publishing
Mhm.
world. You want to dig into all of that. What's the tone? I'm guessing it's not
Oh man.
the most straight line possible of a podcast. What kind of themes and what kind of tones can people expect when they tune in?
We talk a lot about influences, I find. Like the one thing that we've definitely talked about with everybody we've had on so far is like what is the books and the stories that really hooked you into the community of storytellers slash readers slash writer, any of the things that drew you in. So it's kind of become an ode to um our histories and the way stories have made an impact on us and propelled us into wanting to do this professionally, no matter how hard it is. And I find it to be really certainly it's very chaotic just by the nature of who we are, but it's also really inspiring to see, somebody like Clayton who's been at this for a really long time and has a really interesting story to tell if you convince him to start talking. um and I really I relate to that, and I can see myself doing that for a really long time. So I'm really excited about the trajectory that we've headed down accidentally, totally by accident. I feel like succeeding by accident is my whole shtick now.
Yeah, I think like an atmosphere where everyone can be comfortable and just have a conversation is really my goal. I think conversations are interesting. I don't want to sort of bombard people with questions and force them to talk about something they might not
Yeah.
be into. It's like you open the gates, you see where it goes, you roll with it. Hopefully there aren't too many awkward silences.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
And if we don't edit, it's what you see is what happens.
Yeah.
If everything goes to shit, then it's like, cool, we're posting it.
That was the chaos episode that week. Yeah. Yeah.
There's just 15 minutes of awkward silence in there where you all took a little bit of a break.
Yeah, we've actually planned a
Fortunately, that
15
hasn't
minutes
happened.
of silence episode where we're just going to stare at each other and then
Yeah.
post it.
It's a little bit meditative, but
Yeah. Just listen to all my heavy breathing. I was like, struggle to keep myself from laughing just from looking at Fletcher's face.
Hey, fuck you.
just people are like commenting like this is such a meta podcast. Like it
Yeah.
really makes you think.
Best podcast ever right there. We're going to win awards.
Yeah.
Krystle's getting her Nobel Prize for podcasting.
Yeah, for journalism. Yeah. What was it? Oh, I don't remember now. I was gonna get a Nobel Prize. We decided.
Pretty sure there's one for podcasting.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't there be?
Yeah, exactly.
Podcasting will save the world.
Yeah. Oh man, that's our alt title.
The dripping bucket saves the world.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Yeah, so with starting this podcast, if you could interview anybody, living or dead, and this was your dream person, who would your dream guest be on the Dripping Bucket?
Oh, my answer is really easy. Should I go first?
No.
David Gemmell. Shut up.
Okay,
David
sure.
Gemmell. David Gemmell would be like my dream, I think. Other than some of the people that I look up to currently, that would be as the living or dead option. I would go back and talk to him about his process and kind of how he got to where he was as a storyteller, because to read through his books is to watch an evolution in skill, but also a little bit in worldview. And I just found it really fascinating as a younger person. And I think that's my easy answer. How about you, Fletcher?
I think for me, the big one would be Michael Moorcock, because basically everything I write is in one way or another Elric fan fiction. And I'd love to have Ian Banks on, who wrote the culture novels. I kind of want, I can't wrap my head around writing a positive future for humanity. Like I can't see it. And
Wow.
somehow he did it. And I'm like, how do you do that?
He
So of
pretended
all
to
the
be an
people
optimist.
living or dead, you didn't choose like Jesus or something. You went for authors.
Well,
Interesting.
we're
Okay.
doing a book
No,
right
I'm
now.
just
You're
I'm
just trying
just
to stay on
saying
brand.
it's not a moral judgment, but it kind of is.
Well, but I feel like storytelling, I mean, I know you're joking. I know you're totally joking, but also I feel like
Jesus didn't write any
storytelling.
books.
Oh God, storytelling is just such
This is
a.
really not going to go over well with our evangelical audience.
Yeah, is it quite large, or are we gonna be okay? But I feel like storytelling is such a momentum for change in a lot of ways, where, you know, when things aren't going well for a government, we get book censorships and we get arrested artists, and we get, you know, and if stories and books and knowledge and information wasn't threatening, we wouldn't be the first targets when a politician is unhappy. And so to that thought, I just feel like if we look back and find like the big mile markers of storytellers that really shaped the genre, we can see a lot of that change happening in their own arcs. And then so to totally undercut your teasing, I have a very serious answer. It's important in books and knowledge and stories and hope. To Michael's point about, you know, a brighter future for humanity, hope, the ability to strive towards that, it's important.
Fine. Have a good answer.
Yes.
Outside of writing and podcasting and all the things that you do, drunkenly picking up your daughter from school,
For legal purposes, that's a joke.
allegedly, what are there other things that you do to occupy your time? What do you like to do? Who are you as a person outside of that space?
We're supposed to be people
Um,
outside of writing.
yeah, I feel
Allegedly.
like when I'm writing is actually when I'm most a person, and then the rest of my time I'm just mom bots. So I don't have a very good answer, I'm afraid. The rest of my time is spent cooking things and reminding the children to do their homework. So sorry, I'm gonna switch it up and give you a really lame answer after my profound answer. How about you, Fletcher? Do you have a personality outside of writing? I don't think so.
No, well, I
Well, you
mean,
do music.
yeah, I've got, you know, I write and record music. I've got a home studio for fun. I used to do it professionally, gigged in a band, was an audio engineer, recording albums, doing live shows for like 20 years. Yeah, but otherwise these days it's fun, it's a hobby. I am a dad and, you know, a husband and a super sweet, fluffy person in real life, despite what Krystle tells everyone.
Yeah.
Save
Yeah,
all
I'm
the
the one that
darkness
spreads
for
all
the
the
novels.
rumors that you're mean
I know.
externally.
I'm so fucking nice.
That's kind of the tagline for Michael R. Fletcher. So fucking nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
Fluffy as fuck.
So we've immediately become flagged by all of our platforms for the amount of
Yeah.
cussing so far. Thank you both. I
We got
appreciate
the
it.
explicit tag. I
Yeah,
was
we get that. We earned
reasonably
that
well
explicit
behaved.
warning.
Yeah.
I would expect nothing less from you two, so I appreciate it. So let's hop back onto writing. You
Yeah,
both
since you
have
guys said you have no lives outside of writing,
yeah.
just go
Yeah,
back.
we
Like
don't have
we'll
we don't
retreat
have anything
back.
else.
There's no path to go down there, so it's a hard stop.
No,
Uh
it's a cul-de-sac.
back to right, you both have some really dark elements in your work that make it banned for middle grade. Um, do you ever see yourself going down different avenues of different subgenres, things like that, where it's a little bit lighter, I don't know if it's cozy fantasy, but more epic, less grim dark? Do you see yourself taking some of those routes, or are you really interested in exploring this subgenre?
Um, I want to say yes, but also no. I have an idea for another series that has dragons in it, but they're little annoying dragons. They're more like raccoons than anything really badass. And also they're like addicted to mushrooms that literally give people and dragons magic, so they're like banes of the existence. So in some ways it's kind of much more whimsical of an idea, like it goes a little bit closer to my fantasy roots, but at the same time the main character is a crime syndicate and engages in some pretty heinous activities. So I can hit different subgenres and different assemblies of tropes, but I don't know. I'm drawn to this fascination of the things that desperate people do, and usually that leads pretty dark because one, how did they get that desperate? And two, um, where does that bring them as people, and what kind of arc does that lend itself to? And it's always kind of questionable. So I can do the whimsy, but it's always gonna have a dark edge, I think. And Fletcher writes middle grade, as we know. So,
Yeah. Well, I'd see funny. Last year, my daughter, who was 12 at the time, demanded I write a fantasy book for kids her age because she wanted to illustrate it. And since she'd been asking me to do that for about 5 years, I finally caved. Also, I was avoiding a different book. So I wrote a middle grade book. She illustrated it. That's the book that's currently with my agent. I just heard back that he loved it. He's making notes.
oh,
We'll see
cool.
what happens kind of
Oh,
next.
that's good news.
Yeah, had feedback from a bunch of like 10-year-old kids, like children of fans and stuff. And apparently it seems to be going really well. Like kids sort of like they dig in and then they're hooked. Like parents are saying like I've never seen my kid plow through a book that fast because it's
Oh,
a novel. It's 60,000 words.
I
Um,
should have had you send it to Addison. She is a voracious little child. She could have helped out too.
yeah. But we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I want to write different stuff. The one I just finished the first draft of, people are gonna call it grimdark because they call everything I do grimdark. But there are no morally gray characters. It's people trying their best, and
So
it is
you're
dark, but
cozy.
no, it's not cozy. No,
No,
cozy.
cozy grimdark. I was gonna say because
Yeah,
people
no,
call
more like
Brightwash cozy grimdark or fluffy
yeah,
grimdark just
this is
because.
more like heroic grimdark.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I'd go there. So
That's
yeah, I
that's
want to try different
interesting.
stuff. I just want to write whatever story is bugging me at the time. I don't
Yeah,
really care about genre. I'm not trying to write dark. I just whatever I'm interested in, that's what I'm going to write about.
just your
That
soul is dark and it comes
It's
out.
just dark.
Yeah,
That's
that's usually what happens to me. Like when I was doing Brightwash, I was like, it's not that dark, is it? I can't call this grimdark. Like people are hopeful. They're trying to do stuff that's good, right? And then I get feedback from people like, what is wrong with you? Kind of messed up. I knew I was onto something when back in the day, Fletcher was still on Goodreads, and he put a status update at a certain percentage where a certain secret is revealed, and he was like, holy shit, this thing is fucking dark. And I'm like, oh, okay. All right, if Fletcher said it, then I guess I have no choice. So yeah, it's not something that I do intentionally. I'm not chasing it. It just I meet it there, I guess.
Interesting.
Yeah. Have you found that in both of your careers that the grimdark genre has changed at all? Do you feel like there's any differences over the way that you write, approach, or market grimdark books now than maybe you did in the past?
I don't feel qualified to answer because I didn't find out what grimdark was until after I was finished Brightwatch. People told me about grimdark.
Yeah, I would actually kind of the same thing. So I'd never heard of grimdark when I wrote Beyond Redemption. I've said it a million times. My agent at the time said, "Oh, the grimdark crowd are gonna love this." I had to Google it because I had no idea what she was talking about. Um, I think it has changed. There was a time when grimdark, like when I first was published, call that 2015, 2016. Grimdark was something, pejorative that people sort of called dark fantasy stuff. Now it's a subgenre and people are intentionally trying to write grimdark, whereas I don't
Yeah,
think that was
and
ever
searching
previously
for it
the
as
case.
readers.
Yeah, like none of the sort of big grimdark writers, Abercrombie, Lawrence, George R. R. Martin, like none of them tried to write grimdark. None of them were thinking about that at all. They were just writing fantasy, maybe dark fantasy, but and I've talked to most of them, but they were just like, no, I was just writing a fantasy book. Whereas
The way
now,
I see fantasy.
yeah, but now, the kids are trying to write the grimdark.
I do think it's interesting with kind of the rise of this genre of grimdark. I think because of its newness and because of its edginess, that there is an interesting segment of its fan base that are very, you know how some fan bases are very protective of that fan base and they're gatekeeping of what is and what is not allowed in it. I
Yeah,
find that grimdark fans can be that way of like, oh, they're not grimdark enough because
yeah.
whatever, not enough blood, not enough incest or
Not
whatever you
enough
throw in there.
nihilism. Yeah.
Um, how have Krystle, I know you're genre mixing a lot. How have you
Yeah.
interacted with that part of the fan base of Grimdark?
Um,
Do they claim you?
yeah, some of them do. I think those that want, like, if we're gonna call grimdark a spectrum, like where fantasy just kind of slides into it a little bit, at the very extreme edge, those fans are like, it's not bloody enough. Um, but I think with Brightwash specifically, the system is so oppressive and hopeless in a way that is uncomfortable enough that most of the time I'm within the scope of um I think I was voted at about like a 3 out of 5 for like the grimdark scale. Or maybe that was what you said, Fletcher. And that sounds about right to me, where I'm not off the off the charts into the nihilism. But there's quite a lot of grimdark that isn't nihilistic. I mean, even Mark Lawrence himself said that in his opinion, grimdark isn't nihilistic so much as it's defiant hope, where they really have to work hard for every little scrap of hope that they have. And I fit in that really well. So I think it depends on if they're looking for like splatterpunk or if they're looking for themes. And if they're looking for themes, I'm there. If they're looking for splatterpunk, I don't drop enough bodies.
Not yet. Let's
Not
wait for
yet.
book
Oh,
3.
book 3 drops some bodies. Some very
Well,
delicious rioting and pillaging and city burning and all that good stuff. We're getting there.
That's what we wanted to hear. So that's
You're welcome.
we're gonna edit out everything else. Just wait for book 3. Plenty of pillaging.
Yeah,
Now we have our podcast.
there you go.
This is called journalism. So we've talked a lot about publishing, we've talked a lot about writing, all that kind of stuff. What advice do you have for people? I know, Krystle, you're a little bit newer to this, and Michael, you've been around since the dinosaurs. What advice do you have to newer writers? And even now, you're taking on new challenges, you're writing new genre, you're trying a podcast out of nowhere. Like, you're trying new things. There, you have to be hitting some of these same hurdles that new writers are.
Yeah.
So what would you advise them? How would you advise them to approach those hurdles?
I think you. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
All right.
No, I'll talk a long time. You go first.
All right. There's a whole bunch of different advice depending on who they are and what they're trying to do, and you dig into the writing side of shit, but whatever. I like to set goals. You set a goalpost and not too far away. And when you kick something over it, you just push the goalpost back. Because it's never about achieving a goal, because that's pointless. You don't actually care, which is hilarious. Is you hit a point where like publishing a novel is like, fuck, so what? So you just keep pushing
When
it
you're
back
15 deep, yeah.
until it's like, unreachable again. And then you just keep going for that. And the first goalpost was like, I'm going to write a book. I'm actually going to write a whole fucking book. I'm going to finish it.
I'm going to finish it this time.
And that's it. That was it. That was the goalpost.
Yeah.
And then I finished it. It was like, oh shit. It was like the second goalpost is I'm going to make this not suck, which took another 3 years.
Yeah.
And you just keep pushing it back. And it takes time. You have to be patient. You have to be stubborn. And if you're both of those things and incredibly lucky, you probably still won't go anywhere.
And
I
that's
think,
the hopeful twist.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's why you need to keep the goals manageable, because then you can actually feel like you're getting somewhere. Because if your first goal as a baby writer is, New York Times bestsellers list, you're going to accomplish so many things along the way. Just in trying to get there, but you're not going to see the things you're accomplishing, because all you'll see is you're not on the New York Times bestseller list, and that way lies utter madness. But I think, aside from writing as a baseline, I think the most important thing is to invest in the community. Whether you're chasing a trad contract, or you're going indie, or you're any hybrid there in between, the best thing to do is to put into the community what you can. Show up and meet people, meet them where they're at, help where you can, ask for help when you need it. And this community really does lift each other up. We are, and I don't necessarily think anybody necessarily realizes how much they do for other people until that person looks them in the eye and says, because of you, I'm here. And it started to happen to me a little bit, and it was really freaky. What do you mean because of me? I didn't do anything. I'm nobody. But I've cleared a couple of goalposts without noticing, and suddenly I'm helping people just by talking about how hard it is, and how much I suck at this. And I'm able to do that because before I had anything to offer, I was making friends just because I like talking about books. And I was curious about the process, and I met Clayton, and through him I met Michael, and now, holy shit, I'm here, and we're talking about interviewing some pretty amazing people in the next couple of months, and it's just like, you get out what you put in. And if you only look to the community for what it can do for you, I think you're going to be disappointed. But if you look to the community as a communal space where fantastic people exist, you're going to have some really pleasant surprises.
Yeah. And, at the risk of being serious, Krystle, I want to say my first exposure to you
Oh no.
was your blog post on why you had delayed your
Oh
second book.
yeah.
And it was so vulnerable and honest, and really, it meant a lot to me to read that because it it spoke to the nature of this community, that people are able to be just themselves and put themselves out there like that.
Yeah.
But it also, at the time I was working on publishing my first book, and
Okay.
it was really great to hear like other people are struggling too.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and it's a hard thing to do alone. So when you try to do it alone, it's gonna lead to failure. But
Yeah.
I really appreciated that post of yours, and it made me, a forever fan.
Oh, well, that's I'm really glad to hear that because it was hard to it was hard to admit that I was struggling, but I've been trying and I continue to try to be honest about the ups and downs of this business so that if I'm honest about feeling shitty, I can kind of get through it a little bit faster, and it's like, yeah, this sucks. This sucks right now, and that's okay. There will be a a new season soon and it'll suck less, and then I'll be able to enjoy it because I haven't been fighting this awful feeling so hard. And I think that's what I mean about getting back what you put in. If you put in a lot of honesty, you get back a lot of really honest support. And um I don't I've been feeling lately, especially after TBR Con and talking to the people that I got to talk to this week, um, how did I get here? But also I wish I could tell 15-year-old me that I was gonna get here and that doing this was gonna open these incredible doors to all of the amazing people that I've been able to connect with. Because that kid needed to know that we were gonna make it. Um, and now I'm here and it's like I am so grateful for everything that the community has given to me. And so I'm really excited to give some stuff back by podcasting and being weird and vulnerable and emotional on a public platform and dragging Fletcher along with me.
Yeah. So before we jump into Dragonfire, can you just preview like who do you have coming up as guests on your podcast?
Who do we have? We have Anna Smith Spark booked for
Okay.
a couple of weeks from now.
Yep, Anna Smith,
I don't
Spark,
remember where
Ben
my
Galley,
Okay.
Rob
yeah,
Hayes.
yeah.
I've got a
I
couple other people I'm
really
talking to. We haven't nailed dates down, so I don't want to say names until things are
my
confirmed.
my big dream is Brian Stavley.
Oh, that's right, Brian.
Because
Yeah,
yeah, there was a point where him and I and Fletcher were talking about like getting a virtual drink, having a whiskey and like just over Zoom or whatever. And then he kind of fell off Twitter before we could solidify those plans. So now it's like, okay, Brian, I've built a podcast. It's time for you to make good on this offer to come drink with us. And then I can quit. I'll be okay.
Well, it sounds like you have some good guests coming up. I'm interested
Yeah.
in starting to listen to a couple of episodes. So where can people find your podcast? Are you on YouTube? Are you just on the on the podcast platforms? Where are you at?
Yeah, we're planning to launch to YouTube and podcast streaming. So it'll be Spotify, and then I'll figure out the RSS magic
what is
and get
February 8th? Are we going live? Is that
February 8th. So yeah, Thursday, February 8th is our official launch date. So it depends on when you guys are posting this. We might already be up.
This will be the 9th. So
Oh,
yeah.
there you go. So it'll be
Yeah,
it'll be the day after our big birthday. So yeah, we'll be on YouTube and Spotify and all of the offshoots thereof.
great.
Very cool.
Well, let's move on over to Dragonfire. What do you say, Nathan?
Yeah, sounds good. All right, everyone, welcome back. This is our Dragonfire segment where we do a quick rundown of 6 questions. We, as a group, have 3 minutes to answer them, and then we're ready to move on. So, our first question is inspired by the multiverse that is the Dripping Bucket. So, what are 2 or more fantasy or sci-fi worlds that canonically are not connected, but in your head could definitely be set in the same world? So, James, I'll throw it to you first to give our guests a little time to think.
Okay, so I'm going to take a playbook out of a page out of Nathan's playbook and do 2 answers. So my first is The Day After Tomorrow and Waterworld. Day After Tomorrow is just a
Okay.
prequel.
Yeah,
Waterworld
that
is what happens
tracks.
afterwards. And the producers, in a meta way, they actually produced Rebel Moon. They're just trying another horrible project that features Nazis to try to make some money off of it.
Oh man, those are good answers. My answers are late.
What about you, Nathan?
Oh, we're throwing it back to me?
Yeah?
So for some reason in my head, and even before this question, I've always like thought like, what if Legends and Lattes was just like a small slice of life village thing going on during the same world of 11th Cycle by Kian and Ardalan. Like in my head, like you just have like this like total dark shit show going on, and then you just have like an orc opening a coffee shop on the side.
Yeah, that tracks. I'd
Yeah,
do that.
like I just felt like that could definitely vibe.
Krystle?
So a friend of mine, RD Denton Rants, wrote this really weird, this deeply weird and kind of awful and absolutely wonderful Western that starts off kind of normal for a Western and then slides off into this really freaky sand magic. And I feel like uh, just for the excuse of having him and Clayton collaborate, those worlds have to be connected somehow because Clayton gets into a similar vibe of just like what the fuck is going on. But so him and Rance could probably come up with some amazing. So my answer is like I want these people to collaborate rather than shared worlds, but we're counting it, right?
Okay, I'll
Yeah.
count it.
I'm gonna go Malazan and Snow Crash. Malazan is just a server, an alternate reality, a virtual reality server. In the Snow Crash world, it's actually just a bunch of 14-year-old kids running around playing D&D. And that's it.
That's a good
I
answer
like it.
too, man.
Yeah.
Our next one goes back to podcasting. So recommend a podcast. Doesn't have to be science fiction or book related. Doesn't have to be any kind of related to what's going on in this podcast. Just recommend a podcast and why. Nathan, you
Well, sorry.
go for it. No, Krystle, go for it.
I would absolutely say SFF Addicts with Adrian Gibson and MJ Kuhn. They're doing amazing work, and they run these master classes with writers where writers just like dive really deep into something that they're good at and share some really fantastic advice. And then MJ and Adrian are obnoxiously charming, so it's a good podcast.
I'd roll with Peter Attia's podcast, Dr. Peter Attia. It's all about diet and exercise, and he's insanely
You
knowledgeable.
don't do that.
Constantly researching shit. He's a full-on obsessive nerd. He knows he's an obsessive nerd, but he also shares his own struggles with all of that as well. I just find it incredibly interesting.
And you take none of the advice.
Well, yeah, very little of it. I mean,
It's about learning. It's not about putting into action.
Yeah.
Taking your shots. Oh my God, I'm gonna
Just because you listen to a baseball podcast doesn't mean you have to go pitch.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Nathan.
So is yours a baseball podcast? Sorry.
No.
No.
Okay.
I'm gonna shout out a podcast called Musical Mondays. So they release an episode every Monday, and what it is it's three people who just straight up improv a musical. So they literally just have
Oh,
a
cool.
theme, and then they just have to like make up the songs and the plot and everything on the fly. And the episodes are like 20 minutes long, and it's one of the best things that I listen to during the week. For fantasy fans, they did do Brandon Sanderson the musical, where they
Oh,
did
wow.
they did improv things about elves and like all their fantasy stuff just off the fly, and it's hilarious.
All I'm thinking about is like the lines from Hamilton is when like, and Hamilton wrote the other 51. Like, um, no, my podcast is How Did This Get Made? If you haven't heard about it, it's Paul Scheer, June, Diane, Raphael, and Jason Mantzoukas, and they watch a horrible movie, and they just spend 2 hours talking about like, how did this actually get greenlit? And so there's like a lot of Jean-Claude Van Damme films and like
Oh man.
Birdemic and all these like very funny films to watch, and they bring on just hilarious comedians to talk about the films, and I love it.
Their episode about The Room is like an all-time classic podcast episode.
I feel like this game is super highlighting my hyperfixation issues, where it's like all of my answers are gonna be a DSFF. Like I don't exist in any other spaces.
I also
I only
realize
do
you talk like you write.
Yeah, yeah, it's true.
All right. So for our third question, what's a fantastic book with an abysmal title? So does anybody have an answer for this one?
Oh man.
If people need to think, I have one.
Okay, James, you want to
Okay,
pop
yeah,
in?
do it.
The Final Empire. It was so bad and so confusing, they renamed it because everybody thought it was the
Okay.
last book of Mistborn, and so they just renamed it Mistborn.
Oh, I did not know
It's
that.
The Final Empire is the name of the book originally.
Yeah.
And it seemed like the last book of a trilogy, so they renamed it Mistborn because it confused the hell out of people.
Oh, that's a deep cut. Yeah, I don't have anything like that.
Great
I'm actually
title.
really bad. I'm really bad with titles because it's like I'll remember the book and I may or may not actually remember the title of the book. And I'm the same way with music where like I could tell you all the lyrics of the song, but I don't actually know what the song is called. So I would like to pass my answer.
I think the short story collection Mirror Shades, cyberpunk short stories from like the 80s. Terrible name, pretty awful book cover, but amazing short story collection.
Okay.
The only one that comes to mind.
Yeah,
Nathan, do
I
you have
was
an
going
answer?
with just all of the Realm of the Elderlings books, because if you like shot me and like
Yeah.
you were like gun to my head like which book in that series is Fool's Quest, I could not tell you because all of them are just the same 4 words in different orders for 16 books. And
Oh no.
yeah, because it's like
That'll
Fool's
do it.
Quest, Fool's Errand, Assassin's Quest, like
The Mad Ship, that's just a bad name,
yeah, and then like one of them is
objectively.
Ship of Magic, and then the other one's yeah, like the Mad Ship, and then it's like Ship of something else. I want to say Ship of Dreams, but I think that's just from Titanic. And like
Field of Dreams, and then I Dream of Dragons, and then I dream of no, sorry.
yeah.
Just like loose word association.
Yeah. All right. So in this one, it's a multiple choice answer, so that should make it easy. You have to kill off one of these tropes. Either A, good guys can't kill the bad guys because that would make them bad guys. Or
Ugh.
B, a made-up sport or a game in a fantasy world. C, unexpected royalty. Or D, merely a flesh wound. Wounds don't really actually have consequences for the characters.
Hold on, we have to pick only one.
Yes, you have to kill off.
The
Just one to
one
kill
that
off.
you would think
I
of first.
I think we need to each pick like one of each so that we effectively
They
wipe
all
this
die.
whole board because they're all really frustrating. I have a really visceral reaction to made up game / sport, if only because I was so traumatized by Final Fantasy X. If you know, you know. If you don't know, I can't help you with
Is that the
like
like underwater like
yeah, I don't even remember
spherical
what it's called.
soccer
It was some
thing?
kind of and you actually had to get good at that game, and it actually impacted your gameplay, and I hated it with a deep and visceral passion that I still remember this 15 years later. But Michael, you have to pick a different one than I do so we can like snipe through this.
Well, good guys that can't kill. I kill for sure. I got to kill that one. I mean, I don't think I've ever written a good guy, so it's not a trope I've had to sort of deal with. It's like I only write books with bad guys and bad
But
guys on
also as a
one side and bad guys
reader,
on the other side.
as a reader, I find it frustrating where it's like, why aren't you doing something? This person's gonna come back. But maybe I'm too prepared for that one.
Let him go. I'm heroic.
Yeah, no.
Moron.
Nathan?
Even before we start talking, I went with D. The fact that wounds
Oh
don't have
yeah.
actual consequences. Because I think I've railed against it on this podcast before about how I hate
Yeah.
when, like, people are dead, but they're not really dead, or like you should
I'm
have
shot in
died,
the
but you
shoulder,
didn't.
but now I'm climbing up this ladder and my shoulder's fine. Like shot
Yeah,
in the
like
shoulder
I
really
hate when
fucks you
books are
up.
just emotionally manipulative and they're just
Yeah.
like they have things just to make you feel something, but then there's no actual consequences for that.
Mhm.
And then I don't trust things. And I feel like because that's so common in especially fantasy literature, but also in all like science fiction and fantasy, that I don't, as a reader, believe it's ever real now. And so now like characters can legitimately die or legitimately get hurt in books. And I'm like, oh, that's not a big deal. And then,
Yeah.
it
It's
doesn't
just
land
a
and
flesh
emotionally
wound.
resonate in the same way.
Do you want to take a moment to just talk about your trust issues, Nathan?
We need to get into this.
I mean,
I totally agree though, because it robs the story of like you said, consequences and tension, where it's like
Mhm.
if you throw your character off a building and that scares you the first time and then they get up and walk away and you're like, oh, okay, so that didn't matter, like what am I supposed to, and
What,
then
John Wick much?
something
yeah.
yes, well, there's genres for it, I guess. I think it hits different in books because oftentimes then something will happen later that isn't nearly as bad as that thing that just happened, and now it's a big issue. It's like, okay, well, this is a revision problem. You need to go back and track some of these injuries,
Yeah.
and now there's no more time for you, James. So by default, you have to pick unexpected royalty.
I have to go with actually A. I can't stand good guys that can't kill the bad guys. It's annoying. Like you
Yeah.
just killed 30 people to get to this one person, and now you're gonna leave the one person alive, and that makes you good?
It's because the
I
other
hate it.
people were faceless, so they didn't actually matter, right?
Those people had children. Come on. You're a monster already. Just
Bob
continue
just
being a
wanted to go
monster.
home to his kids.
He was a henchman from a service. You just
Yeah,
ordered him out.
freelanced.
Yeah.
Freelanced. Found him on
Okay,
Fiverr.
hang on. This is a book now. Hang on, I'm getting an idea. Fletcher, we'll talk about it later. No.
All right. We'll write that one to avoid writing the other one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
You can do an anthology of half-written books that you share.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And
Yeah.
just
Actually,
like
I could already release that. I think I got about
Just
8 of them.
and I
sitting
got
in
a
the
title.
folder.
Only the Beginnings.
there
I
you
was thinking
go.
Unfinished Tales.
Oh,
No
yours
one's
I
is
think
used that,
better.
that's
right?
taken. I
No.
think that's
No
taken.
way. But those were actually finished, weren't they? Or do they just stop mid-word? Because mine do.
Yeah, mine too.
Just like, nah, fuck it. I'm not writing this anymore.
All right. So for our next question, and I don't actually have an answer for this one, so because I'm mostly throwing it to Krystle and Michael on this, which is that
Okay.
if you had to make a movie or a TV show about
That's
the
a
dripping
name.
bucket, who would you cast as the owner, the bartender, and the dishwasher?
I want Bob Odenkirk as the owner.
Yeah.
Better Call Saul fame. He also did what was it called, Mr. Nobody or something
Yeah.
like that.
Mhm.
And the fight scenes in that movie were so good because like they choreographed him getting tired into the fight scene, and so it's like you could see him losing steam, and it's like, oh, he's so good. And he could play like kind of a shady, double dealing, can't quite trust him, but then also sometimes helps people out kind of character really well that suits the dripping bucket.
I want Clayton Snyder as a dishwasher. Grumpy, angry, doesn't want to talk to you, might just fucking murder you if you
Yeah,
kind of
you're
like
right.
ask for something. It's like, oh no, don't talk to the dishwasher. Jesus. Fuck no.
But he respects Bob Odenkirk specifically, so it would actually work out. I think by default, James, you're gonna have to do the bartender, just so we're inclusive here.
Well, I
Put
had
you
an
on the
answer for
spot.
all three, but fine.
Oh shit.
Um,
Okay.
I went for uh Lashana Lynch. She's from The Woman King. She's been in a couple other things recently, but I was
I have to look.
thinking like somebody who can be kind of like harsh and brash and all that kind of stuff can also like kick some ass, but you can
Yeah.
also potentially see some tenderness. You know, I think she would be interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see it. You'd need that because it's like you'd have to have some people who like going.
I don't think so.
No.
Well, it's
I
it's
think
kind of
better
a bad
is like
business.
sort of this bad business. It's mostly empty. And you go in, the food's awful, and the floor is dirty, and the beer
But
mugs
there's
are all,
nowhere else to
stained.
go.
Yeah, and you don't have a lot of options. And if you want
It's
somewhere where you'll get left alone and no one's gonna bug you, including staff, like you can't even get a beer, it's the perfect place to
very
like plot murder.
restaurant at the end of the universe vibes, where it's like that's it. This is your last stop.
Does it have to have like a bouncer at the front asking you depressing questions, and only if you are like self-effacing in your answer, you're like allowed in?
You don't have anywhere better to be? Are you sure? Yeah, man,
Yeah.
this is it. This is all I got. Yeah,
Like,
there needs to be somebody checking.
must be this nihilistic to enter.
Yeah. It's like, do you have any
I don't
weapons? No, you probably shouldn't come in then.
know.
Go get your sword and come back.
And then come back when
Then you
you're
can
ready to
go
play with
in.
the big hits. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we got our last Dragonfire. What is a unpopular science fiction or fantasy movie, TV show, or book that you like despite people hating on it?
Uh, um. Oh man, this is where I fall apart because I don't know what people like. I do not pay attention.
Yeah, it's so much easier to go the other way. Like, what did tons of people like, but you think is utter
Yeah.
trash?
Fine, just
That's
take over the podcast,
that's
Michael.
me. Okay, so here's what we're doing. I'm gonna revamp the question. I'm uncomfortable with that one because I don't have a good answer. So, Krystle, because you're such a fucking
Yep.
sweetheart, tell us about a book
Wow.
that tons of people like that you think is a huge steaming
Oh,
hit.
I'm
But
gonna
make it
get
someone
kicked
we know.
out. I didn't like Rothfuss's books. And I feel like my card's gonna be revoked. Um I I'm gonna his prose is very beautiful, and I have to give him that, where he is very good at showing instead of telling. But I found those books tedious and kind of pointless in a really weird and frustrating way, whereas like so when are we gonna have a plot, guys? um and recently I spoke to some, or I was in a conversation witnessing somebody saying that they read it once a year, and no shade, but man, there are so many really good books in the world. Why would you do that to yourself once a year? And now my science fiction and fantasy community has been revoked. How about you, Fletcher?
Yeah, I gotta agree. There's that one.
Oh
I
my God.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, but it was like the best book about nothing happening.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with The Hobbit. I tried to read it to my
Oh,
daughter,
man.
and we were both like, fuck already. And they're like, this dwarf had green socks, and this one had a blue hat. And we're just like, we start skipping, and we're like, oh shit, it's only page 12. Like, yeah, so
Oh,
on The
man.
Hobbit.
Look on James's face, man. You got us in trouble. They're never gonna invite us
Yeah.
back.
No, I'm enjoying this. I would say Dune. I hate Dune.
What the
It was the
I'm not
I did
coming
like
hardest
back
the
even
thing
if
book
you
for me
ask.
to
either.
finish.
Oh my god.
I'll watch the movie's beautiful. I'd watch that 10 times in a row before I'd ever pick up another Dune book. It was so hard to read and finish. Come at me. I hate Dune.
Yeah.
I feel better
Uh,
about my answer now. I feel like that's less
Yeah.
less
I mean, I
controversial.
just published a review of Bookshops and Bone Dust where I called it cynical and corporate. And so I
Oh man, you took
guess
you took shots at Daddy
yeah,
Balltree.
I'm
That's
sorry. Like, I mean, like
bold.
the rest of the review was not that negative, but like that there was a pretty hefty negative paragraph in there. So that would probably be the answer for that one. But if I had to give an answer to also to the original
The
question,
actual question.
What?
I will
That
fall
question
on
is
my
dead.
sword
Michael
that
I
Fletcher
thought
killed it
I
like so many
derailed that.
characters.
We're
No,
yeah,
I want
but
to
I
hear the
got
answer. Leave him alone.
yeah, I've got a
okay.
real answer, which is I do think that the TV show The Vampire Diaries is the best vampire themed piece of fiction ever made, and that we should like Bram Stoker can go away because like the Vampire Diaries exists. And really my love extends to any CW show that's like supernatural, like not the show Supernatural, but also the
What's
show
CW? Is that
Supernatural.
country and western?
What?
What is CW? Country
Oh,
and
like the
western?
network, like the CW network, like that the Vampire Diaries was on, and they had The 100 and
Oh my god.
Riverdale and
Oh
Nancy
Jesus.
Drew. Maybe it's a US only thing, but
Yeah, yeah.
They had the Flash and
they
all
make all
Those
the.
like
were
the
all terrible
trashy teen
shows.
dramas, but I loved every single one of them.
I
You
had to
have to
check
have a
which
certain level
vampire
of.
show.
What was that?
I had to check which vampire show Christopher Maloney was in, because if it was Vampire Diaries, I was gonna agree with you. But
No.
it's not. It's True Blood.
Yeah,
I
my
actually
roommate's
know
favorite
nothing
vampire show is
about
True
it.
Blood, and I tell him that that one was not very good, but that Vampire Diaries is really
I
good.
know absolutely nothing about it except that Christopher Maloney as a vampire is a gift to thirst culture.
Well, that was an interesting round of Dragonfire. Thank you for playing along. Kind of. No, this has been a really a treat to have you all on. Once again, like this opportunity to plug your things. Where can people find you? Where can people get your books? Remind us again of the release date of our first episode of The Dripping Bucket. All that good stuff.
Yeah, so the first episode of The Dripping Bucket is going to be February Thursday the 8th, so you should already be able to find it. So you have no excuses now. You have to go listen to the first one. And we're promising 20 to 25 minute episodes, so good for commuting. And we're also promising a lot of chaos. So otherwise, I can be found just mostly on Twitter, kind of being a shit disturber by assaulting people with love and attention and positivity. Just my
Weaponized
ad
positivity.
yeah, that's what it was. at Krystle Matar. I'm on Instagram and TikTok as well, but to a much less extent. I am a little dumpster goblin. That is my happy little trash fire. I like it there. That's about it, I guess. And then I have 2 books. You can buy them. Legacy of the Brightwash and Legacy of Brick and Bone.
Thank you.
And they're both awesome.
And Fletcher helped Brick and Bone not suck. So if you didn't like Brick and Bone, it could have been a lot worse.
I thought
so
you were going to
should
blame it on
take-
me. So
No,
if you
no,
didn't
no.
like it, it's Fletcher's fault because it was amazing. Fucked it up.
No, if you didn't like it, it could have been a lot worse. So thank Fletcher for reducing your suffering.
Could you
The
have talked to
only
Frank
one and
Herbert?
only time.
I missed him by a couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so Michael R. Fletcher, michaelrfletcher.com, Twitter, Facebook, the usual stuff. I'm pretty easy to find. I am around. I has books.
Some of them are Spiffle finalists.
Two of them are
were very
Spiffo
popular.
finalists. Yeah.
Yeah. Two of them were
All
written
right.
with Clayton Snyder.
Yep.
The
The
rest of them
bartender.
were written alone. Yeah.
The bartender.
No, dishwasher. My bad.
Yeah.
Is
Is
already
that his
forgotten.
moniker from now on? He's the dishwasher?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this chaotic episode of the Dragonfire podcast. We are very happy to have hosted Krystle Matar and Michael R. Fletcher. Please go ahead and take a look in the episode notes for links to their stuff and links to the Dripping Bucket. We're really excited to listen to what goes on with this new podcast. Thank you very much, and we'll continue to release an episode every other Tuesday. I hope you join in for the next one.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much for having us. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
We have two lovely guests, the hosts of the new Leaky Bucket podcast, Michael
Dripping
R.
Bucket.
Fletcher. What?
Dripping Bucket.
Oh, we will restart because in the notes it says Leaky Bucket, Nathan.
Oh, that was
Oh,
because
no.
I
I'm
must have
blaming
mistyped
It was
it.
Nathan.
the research. Yeah.
I am blaming Nathan on this. I thought it was the dripping bucket.
Yeah.
Oh,
I just fixed it, so there's no proof.
James, you're just trying to make Nathan look bad. That's mean.
That is
Yeah.
my whole goal with the podcast.
It
It's
is
the only
true.
reason I
It
said
is
yes
true.
to doing this.
All he does is
Yeah.
put me down.
All right. I will